Have you ever poured your heart and soul into something only to watch someone else take all the credit? Well, that's exactly what happened to me at Vertex Tech Solutions. I spent 18 months designing a revolutionary system architecture that landed our company the biggest contract in its history, a $5 million deal with North Star Industries. But when it came time for the final presentation, my boss Ryan stepped in, claimed my work as his own, and pushed me into the background. What he didn't expect was that the client would have technical questions only I could answer. The look on Ryan's face when he realized he was in over his head? Absolutely priceless. But the story doesn't end there. Not even close. I'd love to know which corner of the globe you're watching from, and if this story speaks to you, make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow's video is one you absolutely can't miss. I graduated from MIT with a master's in computer engineering 6 years ago. After bouncing between a couple of startups that either went under or got acquired, I landed at Vertex Tech Solutions, a mid-sized tech consultancy in Boston that specialized in enterprise software architecture. It wasn't the most glamorous place to work, but it offered stability and the chance to work on interesting problems. When I first joined Vertex Tech, I was impressed by the company culture. People seemed genuinely passionate about finding creative solutions for clients, and there was this sense of camaraderie that I hadn't experienced at my previous jobs. My direct supervisor, Melissa Torres, was a brilliant software architect who took me under her wing. She recognized my potential and constantly pushed me to think outside the box. "Alex," she'd say, "anyone can follow the standard approach. What sets great engineers apart is their ability to see patterns and connections that others miss." Those first 2 years were transformative. I soaked up knowledge like a sponge, mastering the intricacies of our tech stack and developing a reputation for solving problems that had stumped even the most senior engineers. Clients started requesting me specifically for their projects, which was both flattering and a little intimidating. But everything changed when Melissa left for a VP position at a competitor. The company took 3 months to find her replacement, eventually settling on Ryan Caldwell, who came with glowing recommendations from a larger firm in New York. From day one, Ryan and I didn't click. Where Melissa had been collaborative and nurturing, Ryan was territorial and constantly concerned with optics. He had this habit of scheduling unnecessary meetings just to demonstrate his authority, and he'd frequently interrupt technical discussions with buzzwords that sounded impressive but meant nothing. Despite my reservations about Ryan, I kept my head down and focused on my work. Then, about 4 months after Ryan took over, our CEO announced something big during an all-hands meeting. North Star Industries is looking to completely overhaul their legacy systems, he said, his voice charged with excitement. This could be a multi-million-dollar contract if we play our cards right. They've invited proposals from 5 firms, including us. North Star was a Fortune 500 manufacturing company with operations across the country. Their infrastructure was a notorious patchwork of systems cobbled together through decades of acquisitions and half-finished modernization efforts. Any firm that could successfully untangle that mess would not only secure a massive payday but would also have an incredible case study to attract similar clients. After the meeting, Ryan pulled me aside. "Alex, I want you to lead the technical side of this proposal," he said, his usual smugness temporarily replaced by something that almost resembled respect. "Your work on the Davidson project was impressive, and North Star's challenges are similar, just on a much larger scale." I was surprised but excited. This was exactly the kind of complex, high-stakes project I'd been hoping for. Little did I know that Ryan wasn't giving me this opportunity out of recognition for my talents, but because he needed someone to do the heavy lifting while he positioned himself to take credit. Over the next few weeks, I immersed myself in understanding North Star's business processes, technical debt, and future goals. I spent late nights researching their industry, combing through publicly available information about their systems, and developing a comprehensive approach that would not only modernize their infrastructure, but also provide them with a competitive edge. The first milestone was a preliminary proposal outlining our high-level approach. I prepared a detailed document and sent it to Ryan for review 2 days before the deadline. He made a few superficial changes, mostly rewording my technical explanations to make them less precise but more accessible to non-technical stakeholders, and submitted it. To our delight, Northstar shortlisted us along with 2 other firms. The next phase would require a much more detailed technical roadmap and cost estimation. This is where things really got interesting. I assembled a small team: Jamie Winters, our database specialist, Dion Washington, our security expert, and Taylor Chen, our UX designer. Together, we spent countless hours brainstorming, arguing, and refining our approach. We identified critical pain points in Northstar's current systems and designed elegant solutions that would minimize disruption, while maximizing value. Ryan attended some of our planning sessions, but his contributions were minimal. He'd occasionally chime in with vague suggestions or remind us about budgetary constraints, but it was clear he didn't fully grasp the technical intricacies of what we were proposing. One evening, after a particularly productive session where we'd finalized our approach to integrating Northstar's disparate inventory management systems, Ryan stopped by my desk. "How's it going?" he asked, casually leaning against the wall. "Really well," I replied, unable to contain my enthusiasm. "We've figured out a way to preserve their historical data while transitioning to a more flexible architecture that will cut processing time by at least 60%. It's elegant and significantly less expensive than replacing everything outright." Ryan nodded, though his eyes had that glazed look he got whenever the conversation ventured too deep into technical territory. "Great, great. Listen, I need you to prepare some slides explaining this approach. The executive team wants an update tomorrow morning." I worked late into the night creating a presentation that struck the right balance between technical accuracy and accessibility. The next morning, I arrived early, ready to walk our leadership through our proposal. But when I entered the conference room, Ryan was already there, my slides open on his laptop. "Oh, Alex, perfect timing," he said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "I've made some adjustments to your slides. I'll be handling the presentation, but I might need you to jump in if there are specific technical questions." I stood there, speechless, as our CEO and other executives filed into the room. Ryan launched into the presentation, speaking with unearned confidence about concepts he barely understood. Whenever someone asked a detailed question, he'd redirect it to me with a casual, "Alex, why don't you explain that part?" After I provided a clear explanation, he'd quickly resume control, as if he'd simply outsourced a minor detail rather than the core concept. The pattern continued as we progressed through the final stages of the proposal process. I would create detailed documentation, and Ryan would rebrand it as his work. I would solve complex technical challenges, and Ryan would announce the solutions in company-wide emails, mentioning me and my team only in passing, if at all. Despite my growing frustration, I remained committed to the project. This wasn't just about my ego. We were creating something genuinely innovative that could transform Northstar's operations. Plus, landing this contract would mean job security and exciting work for years to come. After 6 months of intense preparation, Northstar invited us for the final presentation. They'd narrowed it down to just 2 firms, us and Pinnacle Technologies, a larger competitor with a stellar reputation. The stakes couldn't have been higher. The night before the presentation, we had a dress rehearsal at the office. Ryan insisted on being the primary presenter, with team members chiming in for specific sections. When I raised concerns about some of his explanations being technically inaccurate, he dismissed them. "These executives don't care about the nitty-gritty details, Alex," he said with a condescending smile. "They care about bottom-line impact and implementation timelines. Leave the business. Talk to me." I exchanged glances with Jamie, who rolled her eyes behind Ryan's back. We both knew that North Star's CTO, Dr. Sarah Lynn, had a reputation for diving deep into technical specifications and challenging vendors on their assumptions. Ryan was setting himself up for disaster, but he was too arrogant to see it. The day of the presentation arrived, and we traveled to North Star's headquarters in Chicago. Their office occupied the top floors of a sleek downtown skyscraper, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering breathtaking views of Lake Michigan. As we set up in their main conference room, I noticed the impressive array of executives filing in. The CEO, CFO, CTO, and several division heads. Ryan was in his element, shaking hands, making small talk, and looking every bit the confident leader. He'd even gotten a fresh haircut and was wearing what looked like a new suit. Meanwhile, I focused on ensuring our technical demonstration was ready to go. Once everyone was seated, their CEO, Marcus Bennett, kicked things off. Thank you all for coming today. As you know, this modernization project is critical to our 5-year strategic plan. Before we get into the details, I want to emphasize that while cost is certainly a factor, our primary concern is finding a partner who truly understands our unique challenges and can provide a solution that will serve us well for the next decade, not just the next few years. Ryan stepped forward and began our presentation with practiced charm. He talked about Vertex Tech's history, our previous successes, and our collaborative approach. So far, so good. Then he transitioned to discussing our proposed solution for North Star. What sets our approach apart is the proprietary middleware layer we've designed specifically for multi-source data integration in manufacturing environments, he said, using terminology I'd written in our proposal. This allows for real-time analytics while maintaining backward compatibility with legacy systems. I noticed Dr. Lynn lean forward in her seat. Her interest piqued. She raised her hand. Can you elaborate on how your middleware handles the latency issues typically associated with real-time analytics in distributed systems? She asked. A lot of love and effort went into bringing this story to life. If you're enjoying it, we'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to our channel. Now, back to where we left off. Ryan's smile faltered for just a moment before he recovered. Excellent question. We use advanced algorithms to optimize data flow. He gestured vaguely at a diagram on the screen. Alex, would you like to add some technical color here? I stepped forward and provided a detailed explanation of our innovative approach, which combined edge computing principles with a novel caching strategy that we'd developed specifically for this project. Dr. Lynn nodded appreciatively, clearly understanding and valuing the sophistication of our solution. As I stepped back, Ryan quickly resumed control, steering the conversation toward implementation timelines and cost structures, safer territory for him. But North Star's team wasn't done with their technical questions. Their head of manufacturing operations wanted to know how our system would integrate with their shop floor equipment, which used proprietary protocols. Their data security officer asked about our encryption approach for data in transit between facilities. With each question, Ryan became visibly more uncomfortable, repeatedly deferring to me or other team members. Then came the moment that changed everything. Marcus Bennett, who had been quietly observing until now, addressed Ryan directly. Mr. Caldwell, I appreciate the comprehensive overview. Before we discuss commercials, I'd like to understand something fundamental. The distributed processing architecture you're proposing, which frankly is what sets your solution apart from Pinnacle's more conventional approach, could you walk us through how you arrived at this design? What specific considerations led you to choose this direction over more traditional approaches? The question was straightforward for anyone who had actually designed the system. I'd documented my thinking process extensively, weighing various architectural patterns before developing our hybrid approach. But Ryan hadn't bothered to read those documents, much less understand them. Ryan's face froze. He glanced at his notes, then at the screen, then back at his notes. The silence stretched uncomfortably as beads of sweat formed on his forehead. Well, he began, his voice slightly higher than usual. We evaluated multiple architectures before determining that this approach would best serve Northstar's needs in terms of scalability and flexibility. He was stalling, offering generalities that answered nothing. The room grew tense as everyone sensed his discomfort. I could see our chance at landing this contract slipping away with each vague word. Just as Ryan was about to continue with more empty jargon, Dr. Lin cut in. Perhaps Alex could share the technical reasoning? I noticed they handled most of the detailed questions earlier. All eyes turned to me. Ryan's expression was a mix of relief and resentment as he stepped aside with a forced smile. Of course, Alex was instrumental in developing this aspect of our proposal. Alex, please go ahead. This was my moment. I took a deep breath and launched into an explanation of the journey that had led to our architectural decisions. I walked them through the initial challenges we'd identified in their current system, the various approaches we'd considered, and the specific reasons why our distributed processing architecture was ideal for their particular combination of legacy systems and future needs. I used their own industry terminology, referenced specific pain points their teams had mentioned during earlier discovery sessions, and illustrated how our solution addressed not just their current issues, but anticipated challenges they might face during future expansions. The room transformed as I spoke. Executives who had been checking their phones were now engaged, asking insightful follow-up questions. Dr. Lin was nodding vigorously, occasionally exchanging impressed glances with Marcus Bennett. By the time I finished, there was a palpable sense of excitement in the room. These weren't just clients evaluating a vendor anymore. They were partners eager to embark on a journey with us. As we wrapped up the formal presentation and moved to a more casual networking session with refreshments, Marcus Bennett approached me directly, deliberately bypassing Ryan. That was illuminating. Alex, he said, extending his hand. Your grasp of both the technical complexities and our business needs is impressive. I'd like to have you personally involved throughout this project, assuming we move forward together. I nodded, trying to contain my excitement. I'd be honored to lead the implementation, Mr. Bennett. This project represents exactly the kind of complex challenge that motivates our team. From across the room, I could see Ryan watching us, his expression an uncomfortable mixture of anger and fear. He'd taken credit for my work for months, positioning himself as the visionary behind our proposal. Now, in the span of 15 minutes, that carefully constructed facade had crumbled, and the client was making it clear who they wanted to work with. As we packed up to leave, Ryan pulled me aside, his voice low and tense. Good job in there, he said, the compliment obviously painful for him to deliver. But remember, you're representing Vertex Tech, not just yourself. All communications with Northstar still go through me. I simply nodded, unwilling to create a scene. But we both knew something fundamental had shifted. The power dynamic between us had been irreversibly altered. On the flight back to Boston, I sat away from Ryan, processing what had happened and contemplating my next steps. I'd proven my value in the most dramatic way possible, but I'd also made an enemy of my boss, a boss who still controlled my projects, my performance reviews, and my advancement opportunities. What I didn't realize then was that this presentation was just the beginning. The real drama would unfold in the coming weeks, as Ryan's desperation to maintain control collided with Northstar's insistence on working directly with me. And through it all, a $5 million contract hung in the balance, along with my career at Vertex Tech. The atmosphere at Vertex Tech was electric the following Monday. Word had spread quickly about our presentation at Northstar and how close we were to landing the massive contract. People stopped me in the hallway to offer congratulations and ask for details. Even our normally reserved CEO, Howard Palmer, made a point to come by my desk. Outstanding work, Alex, he said, clapping me on the shoulder. Marcus Bennett called me personally to rave about your technical expertise, said you were the deciding factor in their evaluation. I felt a mixture of pride and anxiety. While the recognition was gratifying, I knew Ryan wouldn't take kindly to being upstaged. Sure enough, he called an urgent team meeting that afternoon. We gathered in the conference room, me, Jamie, Dion, and Taylor. Ryan stood at the head of the table, his posture rigid and his expression carefully neutral. First, congratulations to everyone on a successful presentation, he began, his tone not matching the words. North Star was impressed with our proposal. However, there seem to be some misconceptions about project leadership moving forward. He looked directly at me. I want to be perfectly clear about the chain of command. As department head, I'll be the primary point of contact with North Star. All communications go through me. All deliverables get my approval before they're shared externally. Is that understood? The fee. Room was silent. Jamie and Dion exchanged uncomfortable glances. Taylor suddenly became very interested in her notebook. Actually, I said, breaking the tension, Mr. Bennett specifically requested that I lead the implementation team and serve as their primary technical contact. Ryan's jaw tightened. That may be what he requested, but that's not how we operate. I've already discussed this with Howard. We need to present a unified front, and having too many cooks in the kitchen creates confusion. I knew he was lying about discussing it with Howard. Our CEO had just praised me for establishing a personal connection with Marcus Bennett. With all due respect, I countered, I think alienating the client by ignoring their explicit request would be a mistake. Why don't we talk to Howard together and figure out the best approach? Ryan's face flushed. He wasn't used to being challenged, especially not in front of others. Before he could respond, his phone rang. He glanced at the screen, then abruptly ended the meeting. We'll continue this discussion later, he said, already heading for the door. As soon as he left, Jamie leaned over to me. That was intense. What are you going to do? What I should have done months ago, I replied. Have an honest conversation with Howard. I managed to get 15 minutes on Howard's calendar the next morning. His corner office offered a panoramic view of the Boston skyline, the morning sun glinting off the harbor in the distance. Alex, come in, he greeted me warmly. I've been meaning to thank you again for the North Star presentation. What can I do for you? I took a deep breath and gave him a concise but thorough account of the situation, how I'd developed the core architecture and technical approach for North Star, how Ryan had consistently taken credit for my work, and how he was now trying to sideline me despite the client's request. Howard listened attentively, his expression giving nothing away. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment, tapping his pen against his desk. I appreciate your candor, he finally said. This puts me in a difficult position. Ryan is a senior manager who I brought in personally, but customer satisfaction is our top priority, and if North Star wants you leading the technical implementation, he made a decision. Here's what we'll do. You'll be designated as technical project lead for the North Star implementation. You'll have direct communication with their technical team and attend all major meetings. Ryan will remain the overall account manager, handling commercial aspects and reporting to me on progress. It wasn't everything I wanted, but it was a significant win. Thank you, Howard. I appreciate your trust. Don't make me regret it, he said with a slight smile. And Alex, try to make this work with Ryan. Office politics aren't productive for anyone. I nodded, though we both knew this arrangement would only increase the tension between Ryan and me. When I returned to my desk, an email from North Star was waiting in my inbox. We'd been selected as their implementation partner. The $5 million contract was ours. Within minutes, Howard sent a company-wide announcement congratulating the team and highlighting the significance of this win for Vertex Tech. He mentioned me by name as the technical project lead, which I knew would infuriate Ryan. Sure enough, Ryan stormed into my cubicle an hour later, his face red. Did you go behind my back to Howard? He demanded, keeping his voice low but intense. I simply clarified my role in developing the proposal and the client's request, I replied calmly. This arrangement makes the most sense for project success. Listen carefully, he said, leaning closer. This is still my department. I determine promotions, raises, and project assignments. You might be the technical lead on North Star, but your future at Vertex Tech still runs through me. Remember that. Doc. Threat was unmistakable, but instead of intimidating me, it strengthened my resolve. I'd let Ryan take advantage of me for too long. Now, with the spotlight of a major project on us and the client explicitly in my corner, I finally had leverage. I understand completely, I said, and I hope you understand that my only priority is delivering an excellent solution for North Star. That's what's best for the client, for Vertex Tech, and ultimately for both of us. Ryan left without another word, but the battle lines were drawn. The next few months would be a delicate balancing act. The project kickoff was scheduled for the following week at North Star's Chicago headquarters. As I prepared, I made sure to document everything meticulously and create clear communication, protocols for the team. If Ryan wanted to make my life difficult, I needed to be beyond reproach in my work. On the day of the kickoff, we arrived at North Star's offices and were escorted to their executive conference room. Marcus Bennett greeted us warmly, paying particular attention to me. Alex, great to see you again. We're excited to have you leading the technical implementation, he said, shaking my hand enthusiastically before giving Ryan a more perfunctory greeting. The meeting began with introductions all around. North Star had assembled an impressive team. Department heads from various divisions, technical specialists, and key stakeholders who would be affected by the system changes. Ryan took the lead initially, outlining the project timeline and high-level objectives. He was in his element discussing budgets, milestones, and resources. But when Marcus Bennett steered the conversation toward technical details, Ryan smoothly passed the baton to me. Alex has developed our implementation approach and will be your main technical contact throughout the project, he said, his tone professional despite the underlying tension between us. No one knows this architecture better. It was a calculated move. Ryan was publicly acknowledging my expertise while also ensuring that any technical problems would land squarely on my shoulders. But I was confident in our approach and welcomed the responsibility. For the next 2 hours, I walked the North Star team through our implementation plan, answering questions and addressing concerns. Dr. Lin was particularly engaged, challenging some of our assumptions and suggesting refinements that would better align with their existing systems. What you're proposing for the inventory management module is elegant, she said. But have you considered how it will interact with our supplier portal? That system was custom-built in 2013 and relies on some rather quirky data structures. I hadn't known about this specific system, but quickly adapted our approach on the fly, sketching out an integration layer that could handle the translation between systems. That's exactly why we structured our architecture this way, I explained. The modular design allows us to create custom adapters for legacy systems without compromising the core functionality. Dr. Lin smiled, clearly impressed. That's the kind of flexibility we were hoping for. Our previous vendor treated any deviation from their standard implementation as a change request with additional fees. By the end of the kickoff, there was a palpable sense of excitement in the room. North Star's team was fully bought in, and even Ryan seemed genuinely pleased with how things had gone. As we were packing up, Marcus Bennett pulled me aside. I want you to know how pleased we are with this arrangement, he said quietly. We evaluated several firms with strong technical solutions, but what set Vertex Tech apart was your understanding of our business challenges, not just the technical ones. I'm counting on you to keep that perspective throughout the implementation. I nodded, feeling the weight of his expectations. I won't let you down. The next 6 weeks were among the most demanding of my career. I assembled a core team of 12, developers and specialists, dividing the work into manageable modules while maintaining a cohesive vision for the entire system. We established a presence on site at North Star's main facility, working closely with their teams to understand the nuances of their operations. Ryan kept his distance from the day-to-day technical work, but maintained tight control over the budget and resource allocation. He'd question every additional person I requested, every tool we needed, often delaying critical decisions until I escalated to Howard. Despite these obstacles, we made impressive progress. Our first major milestone was the development of a prototype for their inventory management system, a self-contained module that would demonstrate the core architecture while delivering immediate value. The prototype was scheduled for demonstration to Northstar's executive team 8 weeks into the project. This would be a crucial test of our approach and would set the tone for the remaining implementation. The night before the demonstration, I stayed late at Northstar's office, running final tests and preparing the presentation. Around 9 p.m., I was surprised to see Ryan walk in. "Burning the midnight oil?" he asked, his tone surprisingly friendly. "Just making sure everything's perfect for tomorrow," I replied, wary of his sudden appearance. Ryan pulled up a chair. "Look, Alex, I know things have been tense between us, but this project is too important for personal grievances to get in the way." I was skeptical, but willing to hear him out. "Howard and I had a long talk yesterday," he continued. "He thinks, and I agree, that we need to present a more unified front. The demonstration tomorrow is a critical milestone, and I want us both to shine." "What exactly are you proposing?" I asked. "I'll handle the business impact and ROI portions of the presentation. You take the technical demonstration and implementation details. Equal partners, both of us showing our strengths." It seemed reasonable. And frankly, I was tired of the constant tension. Maybe this was Ryan's way of extending an olive branch. "That sounds fair," I agreed. "I've prepared slides for the technical portion already." "Perfect," Ryan smiles. "Send them to me tonight, and I'll integrate them with my section. Get some rest. Tomorrow is a big day." I should have known better. I should have remembered Ryan's pattern of taking credit for others' work. But I was exhausted and wanted to believe that we could move past our differences for the good of the project. The next morning, I arrived early for the demonstration, only to find Ryan already there, reviewing the presentation with Marcus Bennett. As I approached, I caught a glimpse of the slides, my slides with Ryan's name prominently displayed as the author. "Alex, there you are," Marcus greeted me. "Ryan was just walking me through the architectural improvements you've made to the inventory system. Impressive work." Ryan gave me a warning look before turning back to Marcus with a smile. "Yes, the team has really outdone themselves. Shall we head to the conference room? Everyone should be assembling." As we walked, I pulled Ryan aside. "What happened to equal partners?" I hissed. "Don't make a scene," he muttered. "I'm highlighting the team's work, including yours. This is about Vertex Tech, not individual glory." Before I could respond, we entered the packed conference room. Northstar's entire executive team was present, along with department heads and key users who would be working with the new system. Ryan took position at the front of the room, while I stood off to the side, seething but determined not to create a disruption that could jeopardize the project. "Good morning, everyone," Ryan began confidently. "Today marks an important milestone in our partnership. Over the past 8 weeks, we've been developing a prototype that demonstrates the power and flexibility of our new architecture." He launched into the presentation, skillfully walking through the business challenges, our approach, and the expected benefits. Anyone who didn't know better would think he'd personally architect the entire solution. When he reached the technical portion, the slides I had created, he continued without missing a beat, explaining concepts and design decisions as if they were his own. I noticed Dr. Lin watching him intently, her expression gradually shifting from interest to confusion. Then came the actual demonstration of the prototype. This was the moment of truth, a live walkthrough of the system we'd built, showing real Northstar data flowing through our architecture. "And now," Ryan announced, "I'd like to show you the prototype in action. This represents just a fraction of the full system's capabilities, but it demonstrates the core architecture and integration approach. He clicked to launch the application, and for a moment, everything worked perfectly. The interface appeared, showing a dashboard of key metrics and navigation options. Ryan began clicking through various screens, narrating as he went. As you can see, we've created a unified view of inventory across all 12 manufacturing facilities. The system automatically reconciles differences and highlights discrepancies for review. He clicked on a facility in Detroit, and a detailed breakdown appeared. So far, so good. But then he attempted to demonstrate the real-time tracking feature, a particularly complex component that integrated with Northstar's IoT sensors on the manufacturing floor. This next feature is particularly innovative, Ryan continued, clicking a button labeled Real-Time Tracking. We've developed a proprietary algorithm that the screen froze, then displayed an error message. Ryan clicked again, but nothing happened. He cleared his throat and tried a different approach, navigating back to the main screen and attempting to access the feature from another entry point. Same result. The room grew quiet as Ryan's confidence visibly crumbled. He was out of his depth technically and had no idea how to troubleshoot the issue. After an uncomfortable silence, Dr. Lin spoke up. Perhaps Alex could help with this? Since they led the technical implementation. All eyes turned to me. Ryan hesitated, then nodded stiffly. Yes, of course. Alex, would you mind? I walked to the front of the room, feeling a mix of irritation at Ryan and concern about the malfunction. This was the first time the feature had failed, and I needed to figure out why, quickly. Let me take a look, I said, taking control of the laptop. I opened the developer console to check the error logs, quickly identifying the issue. One of Northstar's sensor gateways had changed its API response format overnight, breaking our integration. I see the problem, I announced. One of the data sources changed its format since our last test. Let me apply a quick fix so we can proceed with the demonstration. I opened our configuration panel, a part of the system Ryan hadn't even mentioned, and adjusted the parser settings to accommodate the new format. Within 2 minutes, the system was functioning again. As you can see, I explained, resuming the demonstration, we've built the system to be resilient and adaptable. Even when external systems change unexpectedly, administrators can make adjustments without requiring code changes or system restarts. I proceeded to complete the demonstration, showing not only the features Ryan had planned to highlight, but several others that demonstrated the system's flexibility and power. Questions came rapid fire from the audience, all directed at me, and I answered them with confidence and clarity. By the time I finished, the energy in the room had completely transformed. What had started as Ryan's presentation had become my demonstration, and the Northstar team was visibly impressed. Marcus Bennett stood up, signaling the end of the session. Thank you, Alex, for that remarkable demonstration and quick thinking. This is exactly why we chose Vertex Tech. Technical excellence combined with agility and problem-solving. He turned to address everyone. I think we've seen today that this project is in excellent hands. The prototype exceeds our expectations, and I'm confident the full implementation will transform our operations as promised. As the room cleared, Ryan stood awkwardly to the side, his earlier confidence replaced by thinly veiled anger. This demonstration was supposed to be his moment to re-establish control over the project narrative. Instead, it further cemented my position as the true technical authority. Dr. Lin approached me as I was gathering my materials. That was impressive troubleshooting, she said. Most consultants would have made excuses or promised to fix it later. You solved it in real time. That's the advantage of having the system architect present, I replied, loud enough for Ryan to hear. When you understand how something is built, you can fix it when it breaks. The look Ryan gave me could have frozen hell itself, but I know. Longer cared about his approval or his threats. I had proven my value not just to Northstar, but to Vertex Tech as well. And this was just the beginning of the project. What I didn't realize then was that Ryan wouldn't accept this defeat quietly. He was already formulating a plan to reassert his authority, a plan that would put the entire project, and my career, at risk. The real battle was just beginning. The successful prototype demonstration changed my standing at both Vertex Tech and Northstar. Word spread quickly about how I'd saved the presentation when Ryan faltered, and Howard called me into his office the following week. "The feedback from Northstar has been exceptional," he said, leaning back in his chair. "Marcus Bennett personally called to tell me how impressed they were with your quick thinking during the demo." I allowed myself a small smile. "The team has been working incredibly hard. It's gratifying to see it pay off." Howard nodded thoughtfully. "Ryan mentioned there was a technical glitch during the presentation. A minor issue with one of their data sources changing format overnight," I explained. "The system is designed to handle such changes with configuration adjustments rather than code modifications. It actually ended up showcasing one of our key advantages." "Indeed," Howard agreed. "Which brings me to the reason I called you in today. The Northstar contract is our largest ever, and its success is vital to our growth strategy. I've decided to restructure the project leadership." My pulse quickened. Was he going to remove Ryan completely? "Effective immediately, you'll report. Directly to me for all Northstar-related work, bypassing the normal departmental hierarchy." This was unexpected, but welcome. "What about Ryan?" "Ryan remains department head and will continue to oversee other projects. For Northstar, he'll focus on client relationship management and financial tracking while you handle all technical aspects and day-to-day implementation decisions." It wasn't a complete victory, but it was a significant shift in authority. No longer could Ryan block resources or delay decisions to undermine me. "There's one more thing," Howard continued, his expression growing more serious. "Marcus Bennett has invited us to present at their annual leadership conference next month. They want us to showcase the new system as an example of innovative thinking within the organization. He specifically requested that you lead the presentation." This was a tremendous opportunity. Visibility with Northstar's entire executive team and their industry partners. "I'd be honored," I said. "Good. Ryan will assist with preparation, but you'll be the primary presenter. This is your chance to shine. Alex, don't waste it." As I left Howard's office, I felt a complex mix of emotions. Professional validation, certainly, but also apprehension about Ryan's reaction to this further diminishment of his role. He wasn't someone who accepted defeat gracefully. I didn't have to wait long to find out. That afternoon, as I was briefing my team on the new reporting structure, Ryan appeared in the doorway of the conference room. "Alex, a word when you're done here?" His tone was pleasant, but his eyes were cold. 20 minutes later, I entered his office. He motioned for me to close the door. "Congratulations on your promotion," he said, not bothering to mask the bitterness in his voice. "Howard seems convinced you're indispensable to the Northstar project." "It's not a promotion," I clarified. "Just a streamlined reporting structure. For one project." Ryan leaned forward. "Let's be clear about something. You may have Howard and Northstar singing your praises now, but projects like this are marathons, not sprints. There will be challenges, setbacks, failures. When those happen, and they will, the goodwill you've built can evaporate quickly." The threat was thinly veiled, but I refused to be intimidated. "If you're concerned about the project's success, we should be working together, not against each other," I said evenly. "Oh, I'm all for collaboration," Ryan replied with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. In fact, for the leadership conference presentation, I've taken the liberty of booking us both for a prep session with the marketing department. They'll help polish our message for the executive audience. I noticed his careful emphasis on our message. Despite Howard's directive, Ryan clearly intended to position himself prominently in the presentation. "I appreciate the initiative," I said carefully, "but Howard was specific that I should lead this presentation." "Of course you'll lead," Ryan said smoothly. I'm merely providing support to ensure Vertex Tech is presented in the best possible light. After all, this isn't just about Northstar, it's about potential future clients who will be watching. I left his office with a growing sense of unease. Ryan was too calculating to directly disobey Howard, but he was clearly planning something. I just couldn't figure out what. The next 3 weeks were a blur of activity. My team made substantial progress on the core system modules, working closely with Northstar's various departments to refine requirements and develop user interfaces that matched their workflows. The prototype had been a simplified version of just one module. Now we were building the entire ecosystem. Meanwhile, I prepared diligently for the leadership conference, developing slides, practicing my delivery, and working with Northstar's technical team to ensure a flawless demonstration of the expanded system. Ryan remained surprisingly cooperative during this period. He attended planning meetings, offered constructive feedback on my presentation drafts, and even helped secure additional resources when we needed them. His sudden support was so dramatic that Jamie pulled me aside after one particularly productive session. "Is it just me, or has Ryan done a complete personality transplant?" she whispered. "I'm as surprised as you are," I admitted. "Maybe he's finally accepted the new arrangement?" Jamie looked skeptical. "Or maybe he's plotting something. Be careful, Alex. That man holds grudges like they're valuable stock options." Her warning echoed my own concerns, but I had no concrete reason to distrust Ryan's apparent change of heart. And with the conference looming, I had more immediate priorities. The event was held at a luxurious resort outside Chicago, with hundreds of attendees from Northstar and their industry partners. Our presentation was scheduled for the second day, as part of a session on digital transformation initiatives. The night before, we gathered in my hotel room for a final rehearsal. Me, Ryan, and 2 members of my technical team who would assist with the live demonstration. Ryan had been insistent on reviewing the entire presentation one last time. "The flow is good," he said after we finished, "but I think we should emphasize the cost savings more prominently in the opening section. That's what will resonate with this audience. The opening is focused on operational benefits, because that's what Marcus Bennett specifically requested," I reminded him. "We will cover the financial impact in detail later." Ryan shrugged. "Just a suggestion. You're the presenter. After all." His tone was light, but there was something off about his demeanor, a tension beneath the surface cooperativeness. "Is everything okay?" I asked directly. "You seem, I don't know, on edge." "Just conference jitters," he replied with a dismissive wave. "I want this to go well. It's a big opportunity for all of us." I wasn't entirely convinced, but it was late, and we all needed rest before tomorrow's presentation. As everyone filed out, Ryan lingered. "One more thing," he said casually. I took the liberty of having the marketing team create some additional slides highlighting Vertex Tech's overall capabilities. I thought we could add them as an appendix in case there are questions about our other services. "That's fine," I said, surprised by his continued helpfulness. "Send them over and I'll review them in the morning." "Already loaded them onto the presentation laptop," he replied. "Nothing that requires your review, just standard company background slides. Get some rest, Alex. Tomorrow's your moment." The next morning, I arrived at the conference center early to check the setup. The presentation room was impressive. Theater-style seating for about 300 people, professional lighting, and a massive screen at the front. Technical staff were finishing the connections for our demonstration equipment. I ran through a quick systems check, verifying that our demo environment was properly configured. Everything seemed in order. The presentation file on the laptop included my slides, exactly as I'd prepared them, plus the additional company overview slides Ryan had mentioned, tucked away at the end as an appendix. People began filing in about 20 minutes before the scheduled start. Marcus Bennett arrived with his executive team, followed by representatives from various Northstar divisions and their industry partners. The room was nearly full when Howard and Ryan appeared, taking seats in the front row. At precisely 10 a.m., Marcus Bennett stepped up to the podium to introduce the session. "Digital transformation has become something of a buzzword in our industry," he began. "But what we're about to show you goes far beyond buzzwords. It represents a fundamental rethinking of how we manage operations across our enterprise." He gestured toward me. "Alex from Vertex Tech has been leading an extraordinary effort to modernize our systems over the past few months. The results thus far have exceeded our expectations, and I'm excited for you to see why." As I took the stage, the butterflies in my stomach settled into familiar presentation focus. This was my element, explaining complex technical concepts in ways that highlighted their business value. "Thank you, Marcus," I began. "At Vertex Tech, we believe that truly transformative technology doesn't just solve today's problems, it creates tomorrow's opportunities." The presentation flowed smoothly as I walked through Northstar's challenges, our architectural approach, and the measurable benefits already being realized from the modules we'd implemented. The audience was engaged, asking thoughtful questions that demonstrated their understanding of the significance of what we were building. Then came the live demonstration. With assistance from my team members, I showcased the expanded system, including several features that hadn't existed during the prototype demo. The real-time inventory tracking now spanned all Northstar facilities, with predictive analytics highlighting potential supply chain issues before they became critical. "What you're seeing is just the beginning," I explained as the demonstration concluded. "By the end of the implementation, every aspect of Northstar's operations will be integrated into this unified platform, providing unprecedented visibility and control." The applause was enthusiastic. Marcus Bennett was beaming, and even Howard looked impressed. Ryan maintained a pleasant expression, but I could see tension in his posture. "Before we wrap up," I said, "I'd like to acknowledge the incredible team that has made this possible, both at Vertex Tech and Northstar. This kind of transformation requires collaboration at every level." I was about to transition to the Q&A session when Ryan suddenly stood up. "Alex, if I might suggest," he called out, "perhaps we should show the additional slides about Vertex Tech's broader capabilities. Many attendees might be interested in our other service offerings." It was an awkward interruption, but refusing would seem petty. "Of course," I replied, clicking to advance to the appendix slides. The first additional slide appeared on the screen, and my blood ran cold. It wasn't a general company overview as Ryan had claimed. Instead, it was titled Project Leadership Team and featured a prominent photo of Ryan next to a timeline of the project that clearly positioned him as the visionary behind the architecture and me as merely one of several implementation resources. Before I could react, Ryan was walking toward the stage. "If I may," he said smoothly, taking a position next to me, "I'd like to provide some context about how this innovative solution was developed." The audience, unaware of the drama unfolding, waited expectantly as Ryan launched into a narrative that dramatically misrepresented his role in the project. According to his version, he had conceived the architectural approach and directed the implementation, with me and the team executing his vision. I stood frozen, caught between the professional damage of allowing this fiction to stand and the potential embarrassment to Vertex Tech if I contradicted my colleague publicly. Howard's expression had darkened, and Marcus Bennett looked confused. Dr. Lin saved the situation by asking what appeared to be an innocent question. "This distributed processing model is quite innovative," she said, addressing Ryan directly. "Could you explain the specific technical considerations that led you to choose this approach over more conventional architectures?" It was the exact same question that had exposed Ryan's lack of technical depth during our initial presentation to Northstar. He recognized the trap immediately, his confident smile faltering. "Well, there were numerous factors," he began vaguely. "System performance, data integrity, Future scalability. Dr. Lin pressed further. Yes, but specifically regarding the asynchronous processing queues. That was a particularly elegant solution to the cross-facility integration challenges. What inspired that design pattern? Ryan was cornered. The question required detailed, technical knowledge that he simply didn't possess. He glanced at me, a silent plea for rescue in his eyes. I made a split-second decision. Despite Ryan's betrayal, publicly humiliating him would reflect poorly on Vertex Tech and potentially damage the client relationship. The project was more important than my ego or Ryan's machinations. If I may, I interjected, Dr. Lin is referring to a technical solution we developed collaboratively. Ryan established the business requirements, particularly around system responsiveness and data consistency, and our technical team developed the architectural pattern to meet those requirements. It was a diplomatic response that gave Ryan a graceful exit while still establishing the truth of who had done the actual technical work. Ryan seized the opportunity. Exactly. My focus was on ensuring the solution met North Star's business objectives, while Alex and the team handled the technical implementation details. The moment passed, and we proceeded to a general Q&A session. But the damage to Ryan's credibility had been done. His attempt to claim credit had backfired, making it even clearer to everyone present who the true architect of the system was. As the session concluded and attendees began filing out, Marcus Bennett approached us, his expression serious. "That was quite informative," he said, his tone neutral. "Alex, could I speak with you privately before the next session?" Ryan started to say something, but Marcus cut him off. "Ryan, I believe Howard is looking for you." Indeed, Howard was standing by the exit, his face a thundercloud. Ryan reluctantly excused himself and walked toward our CEO. Once we were alone, Marcus's demeanor softened. "I'm not sure what just happened, but it was clearly not part of the planned presentation." "I apologize for the confusion," I said. "There was a misunderstanding about the additional slides." Marcus waved away my apology. "No need to elaborate. I've been in business long enough to recognize when someone's trying to take credit for another person's work." He paused, looking at me thoughtfully. "What I care about is the success of this project. Is internal politics at Vertex Tech going to be a problem?" I thought carefully before answering. "No, they won't. Howard is fully committed to this project's success, as am I. This was an isolated incident that won't affect our delivery." "Good," Marcus nodded. "Because after what I've seen today, I'm even more convinced we made the right choice with Vertex Tech, specifically with you leading the technical implementation." Meanwhile, across the room, Howard was having what appeared to be an intense conversation with Ryan. Their words weren't audible, but Howard's expression and Ryan's defensive posture told the story. The fallout from Ryan's presentation stunt was immediate. Howard called an emergency meeting in his hotel suite that evening, with just the three of us present. "I've never been so embarrassed in my professional career," Howard began, his voice tight with controlled anger. "A childish power play in front of our most important client? What were you thinking, Ryan?" Ryan attempted to defend himself. "I was merely trying to ensure Vertex Tech's capabilities were fully represented. The slides were perhaps poorly worded, but the slides were deliberately misleading," Howard cut him off. "You represented yourself as the architectural visionary behind a system you barely understand technically. Marcus Bennett saw right through it, and so did I." He turned to me. "Alex, I owe you an apology. I should have been more proactive in addressing the tension between you and Ryan earlier. Your handling of the situation today was remarkably professional." "Thank you," I said simply, still processing the dramatic turn of events. Howard took a deep breath. "Here's what happens now. Ryan, you're being reassigned. Effective immediately, you'll transition to our Boston office to lead business development efforts. You'll have no further involvement with the North Star project." Ryan's face was drained of color. Howard, that's not necessary. I can still add value to the relationship. The decision is final, Howard stated flatly. Your transfer paperwork will be ready when we return to Boston. Alex will assume full leadership of the North Star implementation team, reporting directly to me. After Ryan left the room, Howard poured himself a drink and offered me one, which I declined. You know, he said reflectively, I hired Ryan because of his impressive client-facing skills and business acumen. I thought he'd complement our technical strength. Instead, he created division and nearly damaged our most important client relationship. Sipped his drink. There's a lesson here for both of us. Technical excellence is vital, but so is integrity. Ryan has the former, but lacks the latter. What happens now? I asked. Howard gave me a measured look. That depends on you. You've proven your technical capabilities beyond question. Now, you have an opportunity to demonstrate leadership on a broader scale. The North Star project is yours to deliver. Succeed, and your future at Vertex Tech will be very bright indeed. As I returned to my room that night, I felt a complex mix of emotions. Vindication, certainly, but also a heavy sense of responsibility. The project that had begun as my technical creation was now my full responsibility to deliver. The coming months would test not just my technical skills, but my ability to lead a complex implementation involving dozens of people across 2 organizations. What I couldn't possibly know then was that Ryan's departure was not the end of the challenges I would face. His embarrassment had created a dangerous enemy, one who still had connections within Vertex Tech and a score to settle. And North Star's systems held complexities that even I hadn't fully anticipated, complications that would push our solution and my leadership to the breaking point. The real test was just beginning. The flight back to Boston was noticeably tense. Ryan sat alone at the front of the plane, while Howard, my team, and I occupied seats toward the rear. No one mentioned the leadership conference debacle directly, but it hung in the air like a storm cloud. By the time we landed, the news of Ryan's reassignment had already spread through company gossip channels, and curious glances followed us as we returned to the office. I spent the weekend recalibrating. My sudden elevation to full project leadership brought both opportunities and challenges. Monday morning, I arrived early to prepare for the transition meeting Howard had scheduled. The team is understandably confused, Howard said as we settled into his office. We need to provide clarity and stability, especially for those who were loyal to Ryan. I nodded. I've drafted a revised project structure and communication plan. The technical approach remains unchanged, but we'll need to realign some of the management aspects. Howard reviewed my proposal, making occasional notes. This looks solid. One question. What about Vince Mitchell? Vince was Ryan's right-hand man, a business analyst who handled client communications and project documentation. He'd been with Vertex Tech for 8 years and was known for his close relationship with Ryan. I'm planning to keep him in his current role, I replied. He knows the project history and has good rapport with North Star's operations team. Plus, it might ease the transition if there's some continuity in the management structure. Howard looked surprised. That's generous, considering his loyalty to Ryan. Are you sure? Professionally, Vince is excellent at what he does, and I'd rather convert a potential opponent into an ally than push him out and create more disruption. Fair enough, Howard conceded, but watch him carefully. Personal loyalties can run deep. The transition announcement meeting later that day was predictably awkward. I stood at the front of the conference room, facing team members with expressions ranging from excitement to apprehension to outright resentment. As you've likely heard, I began, there's been a restructuring of the North Star project leadership. Ryan has moved to a new role focused on business development, and I'll be assuming full project leadership, reporting directly to Howard. Murmurs rippled through the room. I raised a hand to quiet them. I understand this is a significant change midway through a critical project. My priority is ensuring continuity and success for both Vertex Tech and Northstar. The technical direction we've established remains solid, and your individual roles should see minimal disruption. I outlined the revised reporting structure, emphasizing that most day-to-day operations would continue unchanged. When I announced Vince's continued role as client communications lead, his expression shifted from guarded to cautiously optimistic. "Questions?" I asked, concluding the formal portion of the meeting. Jamie raised her hand immediately. "What about the timeline? Does Northstar expect delays because of this transition?" "No changes to the timeline," I assured her. "We're still targeting completion within the original 18-month framework, with the first major module going live in 3 months." Several other questions followed about resource allocation, budget approvals, and communication protocols. I answered each directly, offering specifics where possible and committing to follow up where I didn't have immediate answers. As the meeting dispersed, Vince approached me. Tall and meticulously dressed, with a carefully maintained beard, he projected the polished image of a senior consultant. "Do you have a minute?" he asked, his tone professionally neutral. We moved to a quiet corner away from the dispersing group. "I appreciate your confidence in keeping me on the communications team," he said. That couldn't have been an easy decision. I studied him, trying to gauge his sincerity. "You're good at what you do, Vince. The project needs your skills. My only question is, can we work together effectively regardless of past allegiances?" He considered this for a moment. "Ryan was a mentor to me for several years. I won't pretend that relationship didn't exist." He paused. "But my primary loyalty is to Vertex Tech and my own professional reputation. If you're willing to give me a fair chance, I'll deliver my best work." "That's all I'm asking," I replied. "Complete commitment to the project's success. The past is the past." He nodded solemnly. "One thing you should know. Ryan didn't take the reassignment well. He feels betrayed by the company after years of service. That's between him and Howard," I said carefully. "Of course. I just thought you should be aware." He hesitated, then added, "In the interest of full transparency." As Vince walked away, Jamie sidled up beside me. "Well, that looked intense. What did Mr. Loyalty have to say?" "He's committed to the project," I replied. "At least, that's what he claims." Jamie looked skeptical. "And you believe him?" "I believe everyone deserves a chance to prove themselves. Besides, keeping him close means I can monitor his activities better than if he were pushed aside and resentful." "Keep your friends close and your enemies closer?" Jamie grinned. "Very Sun Tzu to you." "He's not necessarily an enemy," I corrected, "just someone with complicated loyalties." The next few weeks settled into a rhythm as the team adjusted to the new leadership structure. I divided my time between technical design sessions, client meetings, and administrative tasks that had previously been Ryan's domain. The workload was intense but manageable, and the project continued to progress on schedule. Northstar's engagement deepened as they saw more tangible results from our implementation. Dr. Lin, in particular, became a crucial ally, helping navigate the complex politics of their organization and ensuring our team had access to the resources and stakeholders we needed. 6 weeks after the leadership conference, we reached a significant milestone: the completion of the inventory management module, ready for live deployment across all 12 Northstar manufacturing facilities. This was the first major component of the new system to go from prototype to production, and its success would set the tone for the remainder of the project. The deployment was scheduled for a weekend to minimize disruption to Northstar's operations. My core technical team and I camped out in their Chicago headquarters, coordinating with local IT teams at each facility to execute the carefully choreographed implementation plan. Saturday morning began with a final review meeting. Representatives from each facility joined via video conference as I walked through the deployment sequence. "Once we initiate the data migration, there's no going back," I explained. The legacy systems will be decommissioned as each facility comes online with the new platform. If we encounter critical issues, we have a 12-hour window to roll back before Monday's operations begin. Marcus Bennett, who had insisted on being present for this pivotal moment, addressed the assembled teams. This represents years of planning and a significant investment. But more importantly, it's the foundation for Northstar's future growth. I have full confidence in Vertex Tech and in Alex's leadership. His words bolstered morale, but also heightened the pressure. Failure wasn't an option. The deployment began at noon. Jamie led the database migration team, Dion managed security protocols, and I oversaw the overall process, resolving cross-functional issues as they arose. By 8 p.m., 8 of the 12 facilities had successfully transitioned to the new system, with only minor issues quickly addressed by our support teams. That's when things started going sideways. The Detroit facility, Northstar's largest manufacturing plant, reported that their inventory data appeared corrupted after migration. Critical part numbers were missing, and historical transaction records showed impossible dates, some from the future, others from decades in the past. "This makes no sense," Jamie said, examining the error logs. "The data was clean during our validation tests last week. Something changed between then and now." I moved to her workstation, scanning through the database records. "These aren't random errors. They follow a pattern, specifically targeting the highest volume components that Detroit produces." A chill ran down my spine as I realized the implications. This wasn't an accident or a system glitch. Someone deliberately corrupted this data. Marcus Bennett, who had stepped away for dinner, returned to find us huddled around multiple screens, frantically analyzing the corruption patterns. "What's happening?" he asked, immediately sensing the tension. I gave him the unvarnished truth. Someone sabotaged the Detroit data migration. We're working to identify exactly how and when it happened, but for now, we need to delay their cutover to the new system. His face darkened. "Sabotage? Are you certain?" "The pattern is too specific to be accidental," I confirmed. "Whoever did this knew exactly what they were doing and which data points would cause maximum disruption. Can you fix it?" "Yes, but not before Monday's operations begin. We'll need to keep Detroit on the legacy system until we can rebuild the corrupted datasets." Marcus processed this information rapidly. "What about the other facilities still waiting for a cutover?" "I've paused the remaining deployments until we understand exactly what happened. We can't risk similar issues elsewhere." He nodded grimly. "Do whatever is necessary. I'll handle the communication with Detroit's management. Just find out who did this and how to prevent it from happening again." For the next 6 hours, my team worked relentlessly, tracing the corruption to its source. Dion discovered a sophisticated script had been inserted into the migration utility, code designed to activate only during the production deployment, not during testing or validation. "Whoever wrote this knew our systems intimately," he said, pointing to the screen. "They understood exactly how our validation protocols work and designed this to evade detection." The implication was clear. This was an inside job. Someone with detailed knowledge of both our technical architecture and deployment procedures had deliberately targeted the project. Ryan immediately came to mind, but he'd been removed from the project weeks ago and shouldn't have had access to the deployment tools. Still, his technical knowledge was limited. If he was involved, he must have had help. By Sunday afternoon, we had cleaned up the corrupted data and implemented additional security measures for the remaining deployments. Detroit would stay on the legacy system for another week while we rebuilt their dataset from verified backups and transaction logs. When I finally returned to my hotel room Sunday night, exhausted but relieved that we'd contained the damage, I found an email from Vince waiting in my inbox. "Need to speak with you urgently. Not about the deployment issues. Something else you should know. Can you call when you get this?" Intrigued and slightly wary, I called him immediately. "I wasn't sure if I should tell you this," Vince began without preamble. But after what happened with the Detroit deployment, I can't stay silent. Go on, I prompted, suddenly alert despite my exhaustion. Ryan contacted me last week, asking detailed questions about the deployment schedule and technical approach. He claimed Howard had asked him to review the plans as part of a broader quality assurance effort. It seemed odd, but he was very insistent. My grip tightened on the phone. Did you give him any information? Nothing that wasn't in the general project documentation, Vince assured me. But he was specifically interested in the Detroit facility migration. When I told him I didn't have those details, he seemed frustrated. Why are you telling me this? Now? Vince hesitated. Because yesterday he called again, asking if the deployment had gone smoothly. There was something satisfied in his tone when he asked about Detroit specifically, like he already knew the answer. A cold anger settled in my chest. Have you told anyone else about these conversations? No. I wasn't sure what to make of them until now, but after the issues yesterday, forward me those emails from Ryan and document everything you can remember from your phone conversations. Don't discuss this with anyone else yet. After hanging up, I stared out the hotel window at Chicago's illuminated skyline, my mind racing. If Ryan was behind the sabotage, proving it would be challenging. He was too smart to leave obvious traces, and any evidence Vince provided would be circumstantial at best. More importantly, I needed to understand his endgame. Simple revenge seemed too petty for the calculated risk he'd taken. There had to be more to it. The next morning, I met privately with Howard before our scheduled project review with Northstar. I believe Ryan may be involved in the deployment issues, I said, sharing Vince's information and our technical findings. Howard's expression hardened as he listened. This is a serious accusation, Alex. Ryan's been with Vertex Tech for 5 years, built our healthcare practice from scratch. I'm not making this claim lightly, I replied. The sabotage required intimate knowledge of our systems, and specifically targeted the most visible part of the deployment. Vince's information puts Ryan in the picture, asking questions he had no legitimate reason to ask. Even if you're right, proving it will be difficult, and making accusations without solid evidence could expose Vertex Tech to legal liability. I'm not suggesting we make public accusations, but we need to investigate, quietly and thoroughly. At minimum, we should review system access logs and audit Ryan's communications. Howard sighed heavily. I'll speak with legal counsel about our options. In the meantime, focus on completing the deployment successfully. The best response to sabotage is to demonstrate that it failed to derail us. The meeting with Northstar's executive team followed, where I presented a detailed account of the deployment, including the issues with Detroit's data. I was transparent about the sabotage, though careful not to speculate publicly about who might be responsible. We've implemented additional security measures and verification protocols, I explained. Detroit's migration will proceed next weekend with these enhanced protections in place. The other facilities have been successfully transitioned and are operating normally on the new system. Marcus Bennett studied me thoughtfully. You believe this was deliberate interference, not a technical failure? Yes. The evidence clearly indicates targeted manipulation of specific data elements. By whom? He asked directly. I chose my words. Carefully. We're investigating that question. At this stage, I can't speculate publicly. What I can promise is that we will identify the vulnerability, address it, and ensure it cannot happen again. Dr. Lin, ever perceptive, watched me closely during this exchange. After the meeting, she pulled me aside. This has Ryan's fingerprints all over it, she said quietly. I recognize a vendetta when I see one. I was startled by her directness. That's not something I can comment on officially. She smiled thinly. No need. Just know that Northstar has significant resources of its own. If you need assistance with your investigation, digital forensics or otherwise, Marcus would be happy to help. This attack wasn't just against Vertex Tech. It was against our operations as well. I thanked her for the offer, but maintained professional discretion. Involving the client in an internal investigation would raise complex legal and ethical questions, regardless of their good intentions. The remainder of the week was consumed with preparations for Detroit's rescheduled migration. I personally reviewed every line of code in the deployment scripts, implemented additional validation checkpoints, and established a war room for real-time monitoring of the process. Privately, I worked with Howard and Vertex Tech's IT security team to investigate the sabotage. System logs confirmed that someone had accessed the deployment utilities using valid credentials the day before the original migration. The account belonged to a junior developer who swore he hadn't shared his password with anyone. On Thursday, 2 days before Detroit's rescheduled deployment, I received an anonymous email sent through a temporary account. The Detroit failure was just a warning. Walk away from Northstar now, or the next glitch will be catastrophic. Some systems can't be fixed once they're broken. I immediately forwarded it to Howard and our security team. This changed everything, moving from suspected sabotage to explicit threats. Howard called an emergency meeting with legal counsel present. "This crosses the line into criminal territory," he said gravely. "We need to involve law enforcement." Our legal advisor was more cautious. The threat is vague enough that proving criminal intent would be challenging. Before involving authorities, we should gather more concrete evidence connecting this to the deployment issues. "And in the meantime?" I asked. "We have a major client, implementation at risk, and an active threat against it. We strengthen security, document everything, and proceed carefully," Howard decided. "The Detroit deployment continues as scheduled, but with additional monitoring and safeguards, and we accelerate our internal investigation." As the meeting concluded, Howard asked me to stay behind. "There's one more angle we haven't discussed," he said once we were alone. "What if Ryan isn't acting alone? What if someone at Northstar is helping him?" The suggestion caught me off guard. Why would anyone at Northstar sabotage their own system implementation? "Not everyone at Northstar may want this project to succeed," Howard pointed out. "Major transformations like this create winners and losers internally. Someone whose power or position is threatened by the new system might see benefits in derailing." It was a disturbing thought, but not implausible. The new system would indeed change power dynamics within Northstar, centralizing control over information that had previously been siloed within individual facilities or departments. "If that's true," I said slowly, "then we're not just fighting an external threat. We could be walking into a trap with this Detroit deployment." Howard nodded grimly. "Which is why you'll have full authority to abort the deployment at any sign of interference. Better a controlled delay than a catastrophic failure." As I left his office, a disturbing realization settled over me. What had begun as a technical project had evolved into something far more complex and dangerous. A multifaceted battle against opponents who might be hiding in either organization, or both. The Detroit deployment would be more than a technical challenge. It would be a test of my ability to navigate threats I couldn't fully see or understand. And with millions of dollars and dozens of careers hanging in the balance, failure wasn't an option. What I couldn't have known then was that the anonymous threat was merely the opening move in a far more elaborate scheme, one that would force me to question everything I thought I knew about the project, the client, and even my own team. Friday night before the Detroit redeployment, I assembled a hand-picked team of our most trusted engineers. We gathered in a secured conference room at Northstar's Chicago headquarters, with direct video links to each facility's IT department. The atmosphere was tense but focused. "I won't sugarcoat this," I began, looking around the room. "We're not just dealing with technical challenges tonight. Someone deliberately sabotaged our previous deployment attempt and has threatened to do worse. Our job is to ensure they fail." Dayon raised his hand. "Have we identified the vulnerability they exploited last time?" "Yes and no," I replied. "We know they use legitimate credentials to access our deployment tools and insert corrupted code. What we don't know is how they obtained those credentials, or whether they have additional access we haven't discovered. So we're essentially flying blind, Jamie observed. Not entirely. We've implemented new security protocols. I outlined the changes. Completely rebuilt deployment servers isolated from the main network, biometric authentication for all access, paired programming with every action requiring 2 team members to execute and verify, and continuous monitoring of all system activities with real-time alerts for suspicious patterns. It's not perfect, I acknowledged, but it significantly raises the bar for potential interference. Taylor, who had been quiet until now, looked troubled. You realize what this means, right? If someone tries again despite all these precautions, it confirms they have inside help at a high level. Her comment hung in the air, articulating the suspicion many had been reluctant to voice. The implication was clear. We might be working alongside the very person trying to sabotage us. That's why I've limited this team to people I personally trust, I said. And why are we implementing the buddy system for every task? No one works alone. No one has exclusive access to any system component. Marcus Bennett joined us briefly before the deployment began. He seemed to have aged years in the past week, the stress evident in the new lines around his eyes. I want to be clear about something, he said gravely. What happened last weekend wasn't just a technical glitch or corporate sabotage. It was an attack on Northstar's operational integrity. If successful, it would have compromised our ability to manufacture critical components for customers who depend on us. He paused, making eye contact with each person in the room. I've authorized our head of security to conduct a parallel investigation, coordinating with Vertex Tech but maintaining independent findings. We will identify those responsible, and they will face consequences, legal and otherwise. The severity of his tone left no doubt about his commitment. This wasn't just about a software project anymore. It was about protecting Northstar's core business. As Marcus left, Dr. Lin stayed behind, pulling me aside for a private word. Our security team discovered something unusual in the system logs, she said quietly. There was authorized access to our legacy inventory database from a Vertex Tech IP address the day before the failed deployment. The credentials used belonged to an administrator who was on vacation at the time. My pulse quickened. That's the first concrete evidence linking the sabotage to someone with access to our network. She nodded. The IP address traces back to your Boston office. Marcus didn't want to mention it in front of the group, but he wanted you to know. Our teams are working to narrow down the specific computer. This was a significant breakthrough, but also troubling. The Boston office connection pointed directly to Ryan, but proving he was personally responsible would be challenging. Large offices typically used shared IP addresses, and he could claim someone else had used his computer. Thank you for sharing this, I told Dr. Lin. Please let me know immediately if your team finds anything else. The deployment began at midnight. We proceeded methodically, completing each step with meticulous verification. The first 3 hours went smoothly. Database preparation, schema migration, initial data transfer, all completed without incident. Then, at approximately 3:20 a.m., Dion noticed something odd. The network traffic pattern just changed, he reported, pointing to his monitoring display. We're seeing unusual data packets being sent to the migration server. I moved to his station, studying the pattern. That's not part of our process. Isolate it. Jamie was already typing furiously at her terminal. I'm tracing the source. It's coming from inside Northstar's network, a workstation in their finance department. At 3 a.m. on a Saturday? I frowned. That can't be legitimate. I called Northstar's security team, who dispatched officers to physically check the location. Meanwhile, Dion worked to block the suspicious connection, while Jamie analyzed what data had already been transmitted. It looks like they were attempting to inject modified configuration files into the deployment sequence, she reported. If they'd succeeded, It would have corrupted the master inventory records similar to last time, but in a way that might not be detected until weeks later. 20 minutes later, Northstar Security reported back. The finance department was empty, but one workstation showed signs of remote access. Someone had connected to it from outside the building and was using it as a proxy to attack our systems. "Can we trace the remote connection?" I asked. "Not easily," Jamie replied. "They're bouncing through multiple VPNs, very sophisticated." We strengthened our defensive measures and continued the deployment with heightened vigilance. No further attack attempts occurred, and by 8 a.m. Saturday, Detroit's migration was complete and validated. The new system was operational across all 12 Northstar facilities. It should have been a moment of triumph, but the successful attacks left a shadow over the achievement. Someone was targeting the project with advanced technical skills and insider knowledge, and they weren't giving up. Sunday afternoon, I received a call from Howard. "We've got a lead on the IP address Dr. Lin mentioned," he said, without preamble. Our IT security team traced it to a specific terminal in the Boston office. It's in the business development department, Ryan's new area. "That can't be a coincidence," I replied. "No, but it's not definitive proof either. The terminal is in a shared workspace, accessible to multiple employees. Ryan could claim someone else used it while he was elsewhere." "What about surveillance footage?" "That's the problem. There was a malfunction in the security camera covering that area during the precise time frame in question." "Convenient, isn't it? Too convenient to be coincidental. Ryan was covering his tracks methodically." "What's our next move?" I asked. "We're installing enhanced monitoring on all systems Ryan might access. If he tries anything similar, we'll have more comprehensive evidence. In the meantime, be vigilant. The successful Detroit deployment might provoke him to escalate." Howard's warning proved prescient. The very next day, Vince approached me with disturbing news. "I received a strange email from a former client," he said, showing me his phone. "They're claiming we offered to undercut Northstar's implementation by 30%, if they'll switch vendors midstream." I examined the email exchange. Someone purporting to represent Vertex Tech had indeed approached Pinnacle Manufacturing, one of Northstar's main competitors, offering to implement our solution for them at a steep discount, with the added benefit of insider knowledge about Northstar's operations. "This is completely fabricated," I said, feeling a chill, "but extremely dangerous if Northstar gets wind of it." "That's just it," Vince replied grimly. "The contact at Pinnacle is golf buddies with Marcus Bennett. He called Marcus this morning to verify if Vertex Tech was having financial problems or if we were trying to play both sides." My stomach dropped. What was Marcus's reaction? "He's requested an emergency meeting with Howard tomorrow morning." The exact words were, "to discuss concerning developments regarding our partnership." This was a masterful move by Ryan. Even if proven false, the mere suggestion that Vertex Tech was offering Northstar's proprietary information to competitors could irreparably damage trust. And rebuilding trust was infinitely harder than destroying it. I immediately called Howard, who was already aware of the situation and working with legal to prepare a response. "We need to get ahead of this," I insisted. "Complete transparency about what's happening and why." "Agreed. I want you in that meeting tomorrow. You've built credibility with Marcus. He's more likely to believe you than me at this point." The meeting the next morning was as tense as expected. Marcus Bennett and their general counsel sat opposite. Howard, our legal representative, and me in Northstar's executive conference room. Marcus went straight to the point. "I've received disturbing information suggesting Vertex Tech has approached our direct competitor with offers to implement the same system we're paying $5 million for, at a fraction of the cost, leveraging proprietary information obtained through our project." Howard responded calmly. "That allegation is categorically false. No authorized Vertex Tech representative has approached Pinnacle or any other competitor. In fact, we believe this is part of a coordinated effort to sabotage the project and damage our relationship." Marcus looked skeptical. That's a convenient explanation. It's also the truth, I interjected. We've been tracking a series of attacks against the project, beginning with the Detroit deployment sabotage. We have evidence, pointing to a former Vertex Tech employee with a grudge against both me personally and the project. I outlined the pattern of events, the credential theft, the corrupted code insertion, the anonymous threats, and now the false communication with Pinnacle. As I spoke, I could see Marcus's expression gradually shifting from suspicion to consideration. You're suggesting Ryan Caldwell is behind this? He asked directly. I glanced at Howard, who nodded slightly. We have circumstantial evidence linking these incidents to him, yes. But proving it conclusively has been challenging because he's been careful to maintain plausible deniability. Marcus turned to his general counsel, who had been silently taking notes. They had a brief, whispered conversation before Marcus addressed us again. Here's my concern. Whether or not your theory about Ryan is correct, these incidents demonstrate significant security vulnerabilities in both our organizations. The Detroit sabotage nearly crippled our largest manufacturing facility. Now we have potential competitive intelligence leaks. What's next? It was a fair question, one I'd been wrestling with myself. We've implemented enhanced security measures for all technical systems, I replied. But you're right that the human element remains vulnerable. That's why I'd like to propose a joint security task force, combining Northstar and Vertex Tech, personnel to protect the project from both sides. The suggestion seemed to resonate with Marcus. That has merit, but it doesn't address the immediate issue of trust. How can we be certain that Vertex Tech isn't playing both sides? Howard leaned forward. I'm prepared to offer unprecedented transparency. Full access to our communications, client records, anything you need to verify we haven't approached your competitors. Additionally, we'll add contractual language explicitly prohibiting any similar implementation for direct competitors for 5 years, with substantial penalties for violation. This was a major concession that would limit Vertex Tech's future business opportunities. But Howard understood what was at stake. The Northstar project wasn't just about the $5 million contract. It was about establishing Vertex Tech as a premier enterprise solution provider. Losing it would be devastating. After further discussion and some negotiation on the specific terms, Marcus seemed satisfied. We'll continue the implementation with these additional safeguards in place. But make no mistake, at the first sign of further problems, we'll reevaluate the entire relationship. As the meeting concluded, Marcus asked me to stay behind for a private word. Off the record, he said once we were alone, I believe your assessment about Ryan. This pattern matches what Dr. Lin observed during your initial presentations. Someone desperately trying to take credit for work they didn't do, then retaliating when exposed. I appreciated his candor. The challenge is proving it definitively. He's been careful. People like that always make mistakes eventually, Marcus replied. Their ego demands escalation until they overreach. When that happens, be ready to document everything. His insight proved prophetic sooner than either of us anticipated. 2 days later, I received a text message from an unknown number. Meet me at Riverside Park near the boat launch, 7 p.m. tonight. Come alone if you want to know who's really sabotaging your project. My first instinct was to dismiss it as another attempt at manipulation, possibly even setting me up for a direct confrontation with Ryan. But something about the wording caught my attention. The implication that Ryan might not be the only culprit. I shared the message with Howard, who advised extreme caution. This could be a trap, but it could also be someone with legitimate information. Take Dion with you, but have him keep his distance, and meet in the public section of the park, not somewhere isolated. That evening, I arrived at Riverside Park 15 minutes early, positioning myself on a bench with clear sightlines in all directions. Dion was stationed nearby, appearing to be an ordinary jogger taking a break. At exactly 7 p.m., a woman approached and sat beside me. It took me a moment to recognize her, Lisa Thornton, a project manager from North Star's IT department who had been peripherally involved in our implementation. "Thank you for coming," she said quietly, her eyes scanning the area nervously. "I've been debating whether to share this for weeks." "Share what exactly?" She took a deep breath. "Ryan Caldwell isn't acting alone. He has an ally inside North Star, someone helping coordinate the attacks from our side." This confirmed our suspicions, but hearing it stated so directly was still jarring. "How do you know this?" "Because they approached me about joining them," she replied. "About a month ago, I received an email from Ryan suggesting we could both benefit financially if certain difficulties arose during the implementation." "What kind of difficulties?" "Nothing catastrophic, just enough problems to justify bringing in additional consulting help. Ryan has apparently established a side business offering specialized technical remediation services through a shell company. The plan was to create issues that only his company could effectively solve, generating lucrative emergency contracts. The scheme was clever in its simplicity. Many large IT projects encounter unexpected challenges requiring specialized expertise. If Ryan could manufacture those challenges while positioning his new company as the solution, he could potentially make more from the fixes than from the original implementation. "Who's his insider at North Star?" I asked. Lisa hesitated. "That's where it gets complicated. I'm not entirely certain, but I have strong suspicions it's Gregory Winters, our deputy CIO. Gregory Winters was a significant figure in North Star's hierarchy, technically Dr. Lynn's second in command, but with aspirations for her position. He had been notably absent from many of our planning sessions, claiming other priorities required his attention." "What evidence do you have?" "Mostly circumstantial," Lisa admitted. "Gregory was vocally opposed to Vertex Tech being selected for this project. He favored Pinnacle's proposal. And he's had several closed-door meetings with a consultant matching Ryan's description, meetings that weren't on his official calendar." "Why are you telling me this now?" I asked, still wary of her motivations. "Because it's gone too far," she said, her expression troubled. "The Detroit sabotage could have had serious operational consequences. People could have lost their jobs, good people who had nothing to do with these games. And now I'm hearing rumors about plans for something bigger targeting the financial systems module that's coming next." She handed me a thumb drive. "I've documented what I know, including email exchanges with Ryan where he outlined parts of the scheme. I never explicitly agreed to participate, but I didn't immediately report it either. I was considering my options." Her hesitation told me everything I needed to know. She had contemplated joining their conspiracy before something changed. Her mind. "Why should I trust this information?" I asked directly. "How do I know you're not setting me up on their behalf?" "You don't," she acknowledged. "But the evidence is there for you to verify independently. Check the email headers, the access logs. It will confirm what I'm telling you." As Lisa walked away, Dion joined me on the bench. "Think she's legit?" "I'm not sure," I replied, turning the thumb drive over in my hand. "But we're going to find out." That night, in a secure room at Vertex Tech with Howard and our IT security team present, we examined the contents of the drive. Lisa's documentation was comprehensive. Emails between her and Ryan outlining the scheme, calendar entries showing Gregory Winters' suspicious meetings, even a business registration for Ryan's shell company, Integrated Technical Solutions. Most damning was an email exchange between Ryan and someone using an anonymous account discussing specific details of the Detroit sabotage, details that hadn't been made public and could only be known by those involved. "This is the smoking gun we've been looking for," Howard said, reviewing the evidence. "Not just against Ryan, but potentially implicating a senior North Star executive." The question now was how to proceed. Accusing Gregory Winters, even with this evidence, would be politically explosive within North Star. He had allies in senior management and a reputation as a loyal, long-term employee. If we moved against him without ironclad proof, it could backfire spectacularly. "We need to set a trap," I said finally. "Create a situation where they reveal themselves conclusively." Howard looked skeptical. "That's risky. If they realize what we're doing, they could accelerate their plans or destroy evidence." "More risky than waiting for them to sabotage the financial systems module," I countered. "That deployment impacts Northstar's payment processing, vendor relationships, and financial reporting. The potential damage would dwarf what happened in Detroit." After lengthy discussion, we developed a strategy. We would announce an accelerated timeline for the financial module deployment, creating pressure that might force Ryan and Gregory to act hastily. Meanwhile, we would implement hidden monitoring on all systems Gregory had access to, documenting any suspicious activities. The plan was dangerous, essentially using a critical system component as bait. But with proper precautions and vigilance, it offered our best chance to catch the saboteurs in the act and protect the broader project. What I didn't realize then was that our countermeasures had already been anticipated. Ryan and Gregory were several steps ahead, and their next move would target something far more valuable than system functionality. They were coming after my reputation and credibility, the very foundations of trust I'd built with Northstar. And they had crafted a deception so convincing that even those closest to me would question where my true loyalties lay. The accelerated timeline for the financial module deployment was announced at our weekly project meeting. I deliberately emphasized its strategic importance to Northstar's operations, essentially painting a target on it for Ryan and Gregory. "We'll be moving the go-live date from March to February 15th, I informed the assembled team. Northstar's executive committee wants the new financial systems operational before their quarterly board meeting." Vince frowned. "That's an aggressive timeline. Are we sure the code will be stable enough?" "We'll run extended testing cycles," I assured him. "Quality won't be compromised." What I didn't mention was the elaborate security apparatus we were establishing around the deployment. Every line of code would be scrutinized by multiple reviewers, every system access logged and verified, every team member's activities monitored. If Ryan and Gregory attempted another sabotage, we would catch them in the act. 3 days after the announcement, Howard called me into his office. His expression was grave as he closed the door behind me. "We may have a bigger problem than we thought," he said, sliding a folder across his desk. "Our forensic team found something troubling while examining the systems Ryan accessed." I opened the folder to find screenshots of what appeared to be email exchanges between me and a contact at Pinnacle Manufacturing, the same competitor mentioned in the false allegations. The emails discussed sharing proprietary Northstar information in exchange for future consulting opportunities. "These are completely fabricated," I said immediately. "I've never communicated with anyone at Pinnacle." "I know," Howard replied. "Our technical team confirmed they were created using advanced digital manipulation. The timestamps, routing information, even the writing style, all carefully crafted to appear legitimate. They even backdated them to make it seem like this has been going on for months." A chill ran down my spine as I realized the implications. "They're setting me up to take the fall." Howard nodded grimly. "It's clever. If these emails were discovered during an investigation, they would appear to show you doing exactly what Ryan has been accused of, playing both sides." "Where were these found?" "In a hidden folder on a server that only senior Vertex Tech personnel can access. Ryan's account viewed that folder multiple times before his reassignment. I studied the fabricated emails more closely. The attention to detail was impressive. They even referenced specific Northstar systems using internal terminology I would plausibly know. This is sophisticated work, I noted, beyond Ryan's technical capabilities. Likely Gregory Winters' contribution, Howard. Agreed. As deputy CIO, he'd have the technical skills and access to create convincing forgeries. So what's their play? Plant these emails somewhere they'll be discovered by Northstar? That would be my guess. Probably timed for maximum damage. Just before the financial module goes live, when tensions are highest. I considered our options. We could confront them with what we know. Howard shook his head. Without proof they created these forgeries, they'd simply deny everything. And bringing attention to the emails might give them ideas if they're planning something different. So we wait for them to make a move? Yes, but we are preparing our countermeasures now. I've already briefed our legal team and documented the discovery of these forgeries. Whatever they're planning, we'll be ready. The following week brought an unexpected development. Dr. Lin requested a private meeting with me off-site, a small cafe several blocks from Northstar's offices. I need to speak candidly, she said after we'd ordered coffee. There are concerning developments within Northstar that you should be aware of. I listened attentively as she explained that Gregory Winters had begun raising questions about the security of the financial module in executive meetings, suggesting that Vertex Tech, specifically me, might have created backdoor access for unclear purposes. He hasn't made direct accusations, Dr. Lin clarified, just raised concerns about unusual code patterns his team allegedly discovered during review sessions. There's nothing unusual in our code, I replied. Every module has undergone rigorous security auditing. I know. I've reviewed it myself. But Gregory is planting seeds of doubt among executives who lack the technical background to evaluate his claims. Has he convinced Marcus Bennett? Dr. Lin shook her head. Marcus remains supportive, but he's under pressure too. Several board members have taken an interest in Gregory's concerns and are asking questions. This was a more sophisticated attack than I'd anticipated, using corporate politics rather than technical sabotage to undermine the project. Gregory was leveraging his insider status and relationships with Northstar leadership to create an atmosphere of suspicion. There's something else, Dr. Lin continued, lowering her voice. Gregory has been meeting privately with Thomas Reynolds. Thomas. Reynolds was Northstar's newly appointed CFO, a hard-driving executive brought in 6 months earlier to streamline operations. He had a reputation for aggressive cost-cutting and skepticism toward large IT investments. Reynolds has been looking for reasons to scale back our implementation since he arrived, Dr. Lin explained. He questioned the ROI projections in the original proposal and suggested we might be better off with a less ambitious, less expensive approach. And now Gregory is giving him ammunition, I concluded. Precisely. If Reynolds becomes convinced, there are security issues with the financial module. He could use his authority as CFO to halt that portion of the implementation, which would effectively cripple the integrated approach we've designed. I thanked Dr. Lin for the warning and immediately shared this information with Howard. We needed to adjust our strategy to counter not just technical sabotage, but also political maneuvering within Northstar's executive team. Howard decided to take a bold step. We need to get ahead of this. I'm going to request a meeting with Marcus Bennett and Thomas Reynolds together. Instead of waiting for Gregory's insinuations to spread, we'll directly address any security concerns and demonstrate the financial module's integrity. The meeting was scheduled for the following Thursday. In preparation, my team conducted an exhaustive security audit of the financial module code, documenting every access point, data flow, and protection measure. We prepared comprehensive demonstrations showing how the system safeguarded sensitive financial information. When Thursday arrived, I entered Northstar's executive conference room with Howard, feeling like we were walking into a tribunal rather than a client meeting. Marcus Bennett sat at the head of the table, flanked by Thomas Reynolds and, surprisingly, Gregory Winters himself. Thank you for suggesting this meeting, Marcus began formally. As you know, security of our financial systems is paramount, especially as we approach the implementation of your solution. Howard took the lead, projecting confidence. Absolutely, which is why we wanted to address any concerns directly and comprehensively. Alex has prepared a complete security overview of the financial module. For the next 40 minutes, I walked through our security architecture, explaining each protective layer and how they work together to create a robust defense against both external threats and internal misuse. I was careful to make the presentation accessible to Reynolds, who lacked technical background, but clearly understood financial risk. Throughout my presentation, Gregory Winters sat silently, his expression neutral, but his eyes watchful. Occasionally, he would whisper something to Reynolds, who would nod slightly in response. When I finished, Reynolds leaned forward. Very impressive, technically speaking. But my concern isn't just about outside hackers. What safeguards exist against, let's call it, privileged misuse? The implication was clear. He was suggesting the risk might come from Vertex Tech itself. The system employs multiple layers of access control and activity logging, I explained. No single individual, including me or any Vertex Tech employee, can make changes without those actions being recorded and verified by Northstar's own security team. Reynolds seemed unconvinced. Yet during development, your team has had extensive access to our financial infrastructure and data models. Under strictly controlled conditions, I countered. Every access is logged, every code change documented and reviewed by Northstar's technical team. Gregory chose this moment to enter the conversation. That's not entirely accurate, he said, smoothly. My team has identified several instances of undocumented access to financial system components. Nothing necessarily nefarious, but concerning from a procedural standpoint. It was a calculated statement, not a direct accusation, but clearly intended to raise doubts, and completely fabricated. That's the first I'm hearing of any undocumented access, I replied calmly. Could you provide specific instances so we can address them? Gregory glanced at Reynolds before responding. I have a detailed report being finalized. I'd be happy to share it once completed, likely early next week. A convenient delay tactic. He was buying time, probably to manufacture evidence supporting his claims. Marcus Bennett, who had been silently observing the exchange, finally spoke. Gregory, if your team has identified security concerns, they should be shared immediately, not held for a report. Gregory shifted uncomfortably. Of course. The primary issue involves after-hours system access using Alex's credentials on dates when Alex was verifiably elsewhere, traveling or in other documented meetings. This was a clever accusation, difficult to immediately disprove without detailed access logs, which he knew we didn't have at hand for this meeting. That's a serious claim, Howard said, his tone measured but firm. One that would be easily verifiable through system logs. I suggest we adjourn briefly while those logs are retrieved for everyone's review. Gregory's confident expression faltered. Slightly. He hadn't expected such a direct challenge. An excellent suggestion, Marcus agreed. Gregory, please have your team pull those logs immediately. Of course, Gregory replied, though it may take some time to compile them properly. We'll wait, Marcus said firmly. What Gregory didn't know was that we had come prepared for exactly this scenario. I opened my laptop and connected to Vertex Tech's secure server. Actually, we maintain our own comprehensive access logs, I explained. I have them right here, including two-factor authentication records that would show precisely when and where my credentials were used. I displayed the logs on the conference room screen, highlighting the complete access history for my account over the past 3 months. Every login was documented with timestamps, location data, and authentication method. As you can see, I continued, there are no instances of my credentials being used when I was elsewhere. Each access correlates with my documented work schedule and location. Gregory's face remained composed, but a slight tightening around his eyes betrayed his discomfort. Our logs show different information. Perhaps there's a synchronization issue between our systems. Then I suggest we compare both sets of logs, entry by entry, Howard proposed. Transparency is in everyone's best interest here. The meeting. Adjourned with an agreement to reconvene the following day for a detailed review of all system access records. As we left, Marcus Bennett pulled me aside. I know what's happening here, he said quietly. Gregory has been positioning himself against this project from the beginning, but making unfounded security accusations crosses a line. We're prepared to address any legitimate concerns, I assured him. Marcus nodded thoughtfully. Just be aware, Gregory and Thomas have developed a close working relationship. They play golf together, socialize outside the office. Whatever evidence you present tomorrow will need to be irrefutable. The warning was clear. This wasn't just about technical facts. It was about corporate alliances and politics. Gregory had been cultivating Reynolds as an ally, and the CFO's support gave his accusations weight regardless of their validity. Back at our temporary office space, I worked late into the night with Dion and Jamie, preparing for the next day's meeting. We compiled comprehensive system logs, not just from my account, but from every Vertex Tech employee with access to Northstar's systems. There's something strange here, Dion said around midnight, pointing to his screen. Look at these access attempts using your credentials. I examined the logs he'd highlighted. There were indeed several failed login attempts using my username, attempts that had been rejected because they lacked the proper secondary authentication. When did these occur? I asked. Over the past 2 weeks. All after hours, all from IP addresses not associated with our regular networks. Jamie leaned over to look. Someone's been trying to breach your account. Not very subtle about it either. Or maybe subtlety wasn't the point, I suggested. Maybe they wanted these attempts to be discovered. A false flag? Dion considered. This. Create suspicious access patterns to support Gregory's accusations? Exactly. They couldn't actually access the systems using my credentials because of the two-factor authentication. But to someone just reviewing basic access logs, it would look like repeated attempts to gain unauthorized access, Jamie finished. Especially if Gregory only shows the initial login attempts, not the failed authentication results. We had uncovered their strategy. Create the appearance of suspicious behavior without actually breaching security. Gregory could present the login attempts as evidence of questionable activity while conveniently omitting the fact that all such attempts had failed. The next morning, we arrived at the follow-up meeting armed with comprehensive documentation. Gregory was already there, a thick folder on the table before him, speaking quietly with Reynolds. Marcus Bennett entered last, accompanied by Dr. Lin, whose presence I hadn't expected but welcomed. Before we begin reviewing logs, I said once everyone was seated, I'd like to address the specific claim raised yesterday about unauthorized access using my credentials. I displayed our findings, showing both the failed login attempts and the comprehensive authentication records proving that no actual access had occurred. What these logs demonstrate is that someone has been attempting to use my username to access Northstar systems, attempts that were automatically blocked by our security protocols. The question is, who would benefit from creating the appearance of suspicious activity under my account? Gregory's expression remained neutral, but his knuckles whitened as he gripped his pen. Dr. Lin studied the logs carefully. These access attempts originated from various locations, but several can be traced to coffee shops near our Boston satellite office, the office where Ryan Caldwell was reassigned. This direct reference to Ryan visibly startled Gregory. He hadn't realized we'd already connected the dots between him and his co-conspirator. Thomas Reynolds, however, remained skeptical. This still indicates some kind of security issue, regardless of who's responsible. If someone can repeatedly attempt to access our systems, even unsuccessfully, that's concerning. On the contrary, I explained, it demonstrates that our security measures are working exactly as designed. No unauthorized access occurred despite repeated attempts. The multi-layered authentication system prevented it, and comprehensive logging alerted us to the pattern. Marcus Bennett had been silently observing the discussion. Now he turned to Gregory. You mentioned having your own logs showing unauthorized access. I'd like to see those now. Gregory hesitated, The format of our logs is different. They show successful access to certain development environments using Alex's primary credentials. Then let's compare them side by side with Vertex Tech's records, Marcus insisted. Reluctantly, Gregory opened his folder and distributed several printed pages. As I reviewed them, the manipulation became obvious. His logs showed only partial authentication data, the initial username verification without the subsequent multi-factor authentication steps. To someone unfamiliar with the complete security process, it would indeed appear that my credentials had been used at suspicious times. These logs are incomplete, I pointed out. They show only the first step in a multi-step authentication process. None of these login attempts progressed beyond the initial username verification, as our complete logs demonstrate. Dr. Lin, who understood the technical details better than the other executives, examined both sets of records. Alex is correct. Gregory's logs intentionally omit critical security protocol steps, creating a misleading impression. The atmosphere in the room shifted palpably. What had begun as an accusation against me had transformed into serious questions about Gregory's actions and motives. Marcus Bennett fixed Gregory with a penetrating stare. Did you knowingly present incomplete information to create a false security concern? Gregory's composure finally cracked. The logs I presented show legitimate anomalies that warranted investigation. If the authentication records show additional context, that doesn't invalidate the unusual pattern of access attempts. But it completely changes the interpretation, Marcus countered. From potential security breach to evidence that our security protocols are functioning correctly. Thomas Reynolds, sensing that the tide had turned, began distancing himself from Gregory's claims. I was simply raising appropriate financial risk concerns based on information provided to me. If that information was incomplete or misleading, this implication hung in the air. Gregory was being set up as the fall guy. What none of us expected was what happened next. Gregory's phone buzzed with a text message. As he glanced at it, his expression changed from defensive to almost triumphant. "This discussion about access logs may be moot," he announced. "I've just been informed that our network security team has discovered what appears to be a data exfiltration package embedded in the financial module code that would systematically copy Northstar's financial data to an external server after implementation." He looked directly at me, a slight smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Care to explain that, Alex?" The accusation was so unexpected and specific that it momentarily left me speechless. There was absolutely no such code in our system, but proving a negative is always challenging, especially in complex software with millions of lines of code. Gregory had just escalated dramatically, moving from vague insinuations to a concrete accusation of corporate espionage. Whatever evidence he claimed to have, it had to be fabricated, but done skillfully enough to convince non-technical executives like Reynolds. The battle had entered a new phase, with stakes higher than ever. My reputation, the project's future, and potentially my freedom were now on the line. Gregory had played what he thought was his trump card. What he didn't realize was that we had anticipated this move, and had put countermeasures in place that would not only disprove his accusations, but expose the entire conspiracy in ways neither he nor Ryan had foreseen. "That's a very serious accusation," I said, meeting Gregory's gaze steadily. "One that would be easily verifiable through code review." "Which is already underway," Gregory replied smugly. "Our security team isolated the suspicious code package this morning. They're preparing a full report, but I thought this meeting should be made aware immediately given the implications." Marcus Bennett's expression had darkened. If such code exists, it would constitute a breach of contract and potentially criminal activity. "If such code exists," Howard emphasized, "which I can assure you it does not. We welcome a thorough review of the financial module, conducted jointly by both Northstar and independent third-party security experts." I maintained my composure, but internally I was processing rapidly. This was the trap. Gregory had probably inserted malicious code himself and would now discover it during the review. Classic framing technique, but he'd made a critical mistake. "I believe I know exactly what's happening," I said calmly. "And I can prove it right now." All eyes turned to me as I opened my laptop and connected it to the display screen. 3 weeks ago, after the Detroit sabotage attempt, we implemented a comprehensive security protocol for all code modifications. Every line of code in the financial module has been digitally signed, time-stamped, and verified by multiple engineers, both from Vertex Tech and North Star. I pulled up the code repository and displayed the security logs. Furthermore, we anticipated the possibility of someone trying to insert malicious code and falsely attribute it to us. So we added a hidden safeguard. I navigated to a secure server and entered a complex password. A video began playing on screen. Security footage from a server room showing Gregory Winters entering late at night, approximately 48 hours earlier. The timestamp was clearly visible in the corner of the frame. This is North Star's development server room. As you can see, Gregory accessed the secure terminal at 11:42 p.m. Wednesday, long after normal business hours and without the standard security escort required for such access. Gregory's face was drained of color. "Where did you get this footage? Security cameras in that area are controlled by my department." "Indeed they are," I confirmed. "And normally, this would never have been recorded or preserved. But after the Detroit incident, Dr. Lin and I implemented additional security measures, including a secondary, isolated camera system monitoring all access to critical infrastructure." Dr. Lin nodded. "A precaution that now appears thoroughly justified." I continued playing the footage, which clearly showed Gregory accessing a terminal and inserting a flash drive. He typed rapidly for several minutes before removing the drive and exiting. "Our system logs show exactly what changes were made during this unauthorized access," I explained, switching to display the detailed activity record. A package of code was inserted into the financial module, code that didn't go through the normal development process, code review, or security verification. Marcus Bennett looked at Gregory, his expression a mixture of anger and disappointment. "Is there an explanation for this, Gregory?" Gregory's confident demeanor had evaporated. "I was conducting a security test, standard procedure to verify system integrity. At midnight? Without documentation or authorization?" Marcus shook his head. "That's not how security testing works at North Star, as you well know." I displayed another screen, a detailed analysis of the inserted code. "This is the data exfiltration package Gregory mentioned. Our automated security scans identified it immediately upon insertion and isolated it before it could be integrated into the main codebase. More importantly, the code contains distinctive stylistic elements and digital fingerprints linking it to its true author." With a few keystrokes, I pulled up a side-by-side comparison between the inserted code and samples from other projects. This code wasn't written by anyone at Vertex Tech. It matches the programming style and signature techniques used in systems developed by Integrated Technical Solutions, the shell company recently established by Ryan Caldwell. The revelation hung in the air for a moment before I delivered the final piece of evidence. "We've been monitoring communications between Gregory and Ryan since we became aware of their collaboration. This morning, approximately 1 hour before our meeting, Ryan sent Gregory a text message saying, 'Package delivery confirmed. Proceed with discovery. Backup ready when needed.'" I displayed the intercepted message on screen, courtesy of North Star's security team who had been quietly investigating. Gregory under Dr. Lin's direction. Gregory's expression shifted from shock to resignation. Thomas Reynolds, sensing the collapse of Gregory's credibility, immediately moved to distance himself. "I had no knowledge of any of this," he insisted. "My concerns were based solely on information Gregory provided, which I accepted in good faith." "Marcus," Bennett had heard enough. "Gregory, please surrender your access badge to security." As of this moment, you're suspended pending a full investigation. He turned to his assistant. Please call legal and have them join us immediately. As Gregory was escorted from the room, the atmosphere remained tense. Marcus turned to me and, Howard, I owe both of you an apology. It appears Vertex Tech has been the target of a sophisticated attempt to undermine not just this project, but your company's reputation. We appreciate your willingness to examine the evidence objectively, Howard replied. Many clients would have simply terminated the relationship at the first hint of security concerns. Marcus nodded thoughtfully. This project is too important to North Star's future to abandon without thorough investigation. And frankly, the quality of work your team has delivered gave us reason to be skeptical of the accusations. The meeting concluded with a renewed commitment to the project and additional security protocols to prevent any further sabotage attempts. As we left North Star's offices, Howard clapped me on the shoulder. Masterfully handled, he said. Though, I'm curious, how long have you known about Gregory's late-night server room visit? Since it happened, I admitted. Dr. Lin alerted me immediately. We decided to wait and see what they were planning, rather than confront them immediately. Risky strategy. But effective. If we'd stopped Gregory then, they would have simply tried another approach. This way, we caught them in the act with irrefutable evidence. The aftermath unfolded rapidly. North Star's internal investigation, combined with evidence we provided, led to Gregory Winters being terminated for corporate espionage and sabotage. Criminal charges were filed against both him and Ryan Caldwell, who was arrested the following week while attempting to board a flight to the Cayman Islands. During the legal proceedings, the full extent of their scheme emerged. Ryan had established integrated technical solutions shortly after his reassignment, positioning it as a specialized consulting firm focusing on remediation of complex technical implementations. The business model was simple but devious. Sabotage projects, then offer to fix the resulting problems at premium rates. Gregory had been promised a significant ownership stake in the new venture once he left North Star, which he planned to do, after collecting a generous severance package when the Vertex Tech implementation failed. Their conspiracy had begun as a revenge plot against me, but evolved into a broader scheme to profit from manufactured crisis. With the saboteurs removed, the North Star project proceeded smoothly. The financial module was deployed successfully in February, followed by the remaining system components over the next several months. By the original deadline, the entire implementation was complete, operational, and delivering the promised benefits. The project's success transformed Vertex Tech's market position. North Star became our most prominent reference client, and Marcus Bennett personally recommended us to his industry peers. New contracts followed, each larger than the last, as our reputation for both technical excellence and integrity spread. Howard called me into his office 1 year after the project's completion. I have a proposition for you, he said, gesturing for me to sit. The board has approved a new position, Chief Technology Officer for Vertex Tech. I'd like you to take it. The offer was unexpected, but welcome. That's a significant promotion. Howard smiled. Well earned. Your leadership on the North Star project didn't just save a critical contract, it established a new standard for how we approach enterprise implementations. Plus, your handling of the sabotage situation demonstrated exactly the kind of calm under pressure we need in executive leadership. As I considered the offer, Howard added, "There's one other thing. Marcus Bennett called yesterday. North Star is planning a major expansion into international markets. They want Vertex Tech to develop the global technology infrastructure, a contract potentially worth over $20 million. And they specifically requested that you lead the project personally," he continued. "Though in your new role as CTO, you'll be overseeing it at a higher level, with a team of project managers reporting to you." I accepted the promotion, of course. The new position brought greater responsibilities, but also the opportunity to shape Vertex Tech's technical direction and mentor promising engineers the way Melissa had once mentored me. 6 months into my tenure, as CTO, I received an unexpected email from Ryan Caldwell. He had accepted a plea deal and was serving a reduced sentence for corporate espionage. "I made a terrible mistake letting ego and revenge drive my actions," he wrote. "The irony isn't lost on me. If I had simply collaborated with you instead of trying to claim credit and then destroy you, we both could have benefited from North Star's success. I'll be living with the consequences of my choices for years to come." I never responded to his message. Some bridges once burned cannot and should not be rebuilt. Looking back on the entire saga from North Star to the present, the lessons seem clear. Technical excellence matters, but integrity matters more. Documentation and security protocols aren't bureaucratic overhead. They're essential protection against both malice and misunderstanding. And perhaps most importantly, your reputation is built not just on what you create, but how you conduct yourself when challenged. I still think occasionally about that moment in the North Star conference room when Ryan froze, unable to explain the architecture he claimed to have designed. It was a pivotal moment, not just for the project or my career, but for understanding a fundamental truth about professional life. You can borrow someone's slides. You can repeat their terminology. You can even claim credit for their work in the short term. But eventually, you'll face questions only genuine knowledge can answer. And in that moment, the truth always emerges. As Vertex Tech continues to grow, I've made it my mission to create a culture where credit is properly attributed, collaboration is valued over competition, and integrity is non-negotiable. The technical challenges we tackle are complex, but the principles guiding our approach are simple. Do excellent work, be honest about both successes and failures, and remember that your reputation is built over years, but can be damaged in minutes. The North Star Project, that $5 million implementation that nearly derailed my career, ultimately became the foundation for everything that followed. Not just technically, but as a profound lesson in navigating corporate politics while maintaining professional integrity. And occasionally, when mentoring younger engineers facing difficult situations with challenging personalities, I share a simplified version of the story. Not to cast myself as the hero, but to illustrate an essential truth. Technical skills might get you in the door, but how you handle adversity determines whether you'll still be standing when the dust settles. The most satisfying moment came 3 years after the project's completion, when I was invited to speak at North Star's annual leadership conference, the same event where Ryan had tried to reclaim credit with his misleading slides. As I took the stage and saw Marcus Bennett and Dr. Lin in the front row, I felt a sense of completion. Innovation isn't just about technology, I began my address. It's about trust, collaboration, and perseverance in the face of obstacles. The systems we build are only as good as the relationships that support them. In the years since, that philosophy has guided both my leadership approach and Vertex Tech's continued growth. We've become known not just for technical excellence, but for a culture of integrity that clients can trust implicitly. As for Ryan and Gregory, their cautionary tale serves as a reminder that shortcuts to success often lead to dead ends. Ryan eventually found work after serving his sentence, though never again in a leadership position. Gregory faced more severe consequences, including a longer prison term and substantial financial penalties. The experience changed me fundamentally. I became more attuned to office politics without becoming cynical, more careful with documentation without becoming paranoid, and more appreciative of genuine collaborators like Jamie, Dion, and Taylor, who stood by me throughout the ordeal. Most importantly, I learned that your real impact isn't measured by who gets credit on a particular day, but by the lasting value you create and the integrity with which you create it. That $5 million project wasn't just a technical challenge to overcome. It was a defining chapter in my professional journey, reshaping not just my career trajectory, but my entire approach to leadership. In the end, the story isn't really about Ryan's failure when asked technical questions he couldn't answer. It's about what happens after such moments, how we respond to adversity, maintain our integrity when tested, and ultimately build something meaningful that outlasts the drama of any single project or personality. Looking for more? We've got 2 amazing stories ready for you right on screen. If this one touched you, these are absolutely worth your time. Click to watch them now. And hey, subscribe and hit that bell to never miss our latest uploads.